So today we have three presenters, and we will be joined by two panelists. We have Lindis Collins Lucas, Anania Ayodele, Lucky Magagula, myself, O'Shane Moncrieve, and Babatunde Babalola. Our topic is Rites of Passage. We will be going over the outcomes. We will have presentations from Lindis, which is, we'll be talking about Yensumu and Acha. And Anania, we'll be talking about Anania Learning Journey, Inc. We will be also having our Delta family staff speaking about the Lucky, who will be speaking about Delta Family Youth Justice and our programs. And then we'll jump into our panel discussions and Q&A.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Danny Zukudu, and I'm currently the OWL program assistant working in partnership with O'Shane. So essentially, Delta Family is a non-for-profit community-based agency, and pretty much has been providing a range of targeted services that focus on Black youth, newcomers, and also seniors. So we have a lot of programs going on. I'm currently part of the OWL program, which is part of the capacity building poverty reduction team. We also have the Youth Justice Program, which is, we also have the Oz program and the Mamir Dane program. And then we also have the Metapo program, which is currently has a partnership with CAS Toronto. We also have the SNAP team, which focuses on culturally appropriate and evidence-based counseling services. And then we also provide community engagement services. So the team that I work with specifically is a capacity building and poverty reduction team. So this team pretty much works in helping improve the socioeconomic status of underprivileged people. So there's 6 programs currently going on with capacity building team, which the first being trusteeship, the second being capacity building, also working with the Black Agency Network, and AWA, which is currently an employment program. So my role with that is also to work on providing youth with entrepreneurship skills and employment readiness skills. We also have the local economic development and also the sewing help, which provides sewing repair services. And for anybody who wants to learn about sewing, you can reach out to the Sewing Hub team as well.
Today's outcome is to introduce the Rites of Passage process, to highlight various Rites of Passage processes in the GTA, to explore current Rites of Passage in Nigeria, to explore the relevance of Rites of Passage in today's world and beyond, and to also share how we can connect with rights and other African or Black focused programs across Toronto. So what are rites of passage? A rites of passage is an African tradition found in most, if not all, regions of the continent. It involves a transition of an individual going through their womanhood or their manhood journey. Going through this process, a young person or adult can answer the questions such as, who am I, or what is my purpose? Okay, so our first presenter is Lindis Collins Buchas, is a mother, wife, and longtime community volunteer. In her paid work, she is a private practice physiotherapist working in the GTA community with neurologically impaired clients. Lindis, her Akan day name is Afua. She is a rights initiate of the Mamurua family that initiated in 2009. Mamurua means crossing paths, which means a life devoid of challenges is not a life truly lived. Lindis enjoys spending time with her family and friends, traveling and participating as a volunteer in the African Canadian community with the nonprofit groups such as Yensumu, Adults Rites of Passage, and the African Canadian Heritage Association. Our next presenter is Anania Ayodele. Anania is a leadership coach, author, and ancient wisdom teacher who considers herself a spiritual liberation activist. She believes and knows firsthand that a decolonized and re-indigenized approach brings measurable impacts through whether it be social, political, or economic. Anania is known for masterfully integrating her spiritual and corporate expertise throughout all her services to create a transformational impact. She is also a Yoruba priest and is initiated in various other ancient wisdom traditions, including Akan. Next, we have Lucky. Lucky holds a BA in criminology and a diploma in community justice services. He has over 13 years of experience working with youth affected by the justice system. Currently, Lucky works as a Delta Family Resource Center as a youth justice worker under the Youth Justice Department. So we just wanted to say thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from our presenters.
Okay, before we actually start with Lindis, which I know we're going right into, and we're not at the panelists yet, so we can just, I wanted to just maybe give a bit of a context of the whole frame of rights, because quite often people think of rights as something which is strange and foreign, but we go through many passages in our lives, all of us. So in African traditions, there are 4 main rights. There's the right of birth. Then there's the right of adulthood, which is what we're focusing on today. Then there's the right of marriage, which some of us may or may not have done. And then we have the right of eldership. And then the final right is as you transition, hopefully if you've lived a positive life, into ancestorhood. Not everybody who dies is an ancestor per se. Everybody who dies is a relative who's died, but it's only really those who have lived lives which have helped community and family who are ancestors. So just to put a bit of it into context and to kind of ground it for those of you who are listening. So we really welcome you. We're really happy that you're here with us. As we speak, and I'm going to turn it back over to Ashane just now to start the actually presentations. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat. And comments, because we love to hear your comments. It's not just us talking at you, it's a conversation that we're having. That's the African way. Imagine we're sitting under a tree in a backyard somewhere and we're chatting about rights. All right, so basically use the chat. Because we're really limited for time, we have 5 amazing participants and they have a lot to say. So we're kind of monitoring the time, but put the questions in the chat and O'Shane will decide if we do them after at the end or if we entertain them as we continue. So thank you, sit back, participate and enjoy. Back to you, O'Shane.
Sure. So along with our 3 presenters that I mentioned before, we also are joined by 2 other panelists, one of them being myself, who is a youth that has gone through the Rites of Passage process. And we also have Babatunde, who is knowledgeable about the Rites of Passage process and can speak about it in the context of being on the continent. Who's also here as well. So we will jump in and we'll start with Lindis, who will talk to us about Acha and Yensumu.
Okay, I'm just gonna, thanks O'Shane, thank you, Kemi. I will just start with just saying that, first of all, the group that I initiated with is called Maramu. It's a very tongue-twisting name. And it's a rare, we couldn't find it anywhere when we did our initiation. We had to choose a name. And we loved it because everybody in our group had all gone through crossing paths, like lots of traumas and stresses, but we all agreed that without those, you don't grow. So when we saw that name, it just seemed befitting for the group. So can you put it in slide share mode? Thank you. So I'm actually here representing Yensumu Rites of Passage, which is the Rites of Passage that myself, O'Shane, Kemi, a few people on the call did, but I also volunteer with the African Canadian Heritage Association. And believe it or not, the African Canadian Heritage Association also follows the tenets of the Rites of Passage program that we do in Yensumu. So for me, the transition from volunteering with ACHA to actually doing the Yensumu Rites of Passage was not a big leap. I felt it was just like the next step for me to learn a bit more about my African ancestry, heritage, and culture. So I'm going to do things a little bit differently today, and I'm going to throw out a kind of a presentation that we would do during our African Canadian Heritage programming on a Saturday. And literally, we actually did something that was very akin to what Rites of Passage is. You'll see as I go along. The main principles that we use in the program and with Yensumu are, we use in Nguzo Saba, 7 principles, the Kwanzaa principles that some of you may already be familiar with, and also Ma'at. But I'm going to talk more about the 7 principles just because people are probably more familiar with that. And we always look through our Afrocentric lens with whatever we do in the African Canadian Heritage Association. So the Kwanzaa principles, I'm just going to quickly run through them. Umoja, unity; Kujichagulia, self-determination; Ujima, collective work and responsibility; Ujamaa, cooperative economics; Nia, purpose; Kuumba, creativity; and Imani, faith. The one that we're going to focus on today, because we're talking about rites of passage, all of them apply, but self-determination is really the tenets of what rites of passage is all about. So what we normally do on a Saturday is we talk about our Sankofa journey. If anybody can see, I do have a Sankofa image on my counter behind me. I keep that very close to me because without understanding our past, we cannot move forward. We should not make the same mistakes we made, and we should also learn from what happened in the past to either do better or not make the same mistakes in the future. So for rites of passage, it's very important for us that we know about our past and move forward with that in mind. ACHA, what we normally do, we're looking at our historical and cultural identity, which includes understanding, expressing, applying, exploring, and demonstrations of how these 7 principles apply. And particularly today, we're looking at Kujichagulia, self-determination. So our frame of reference today for this presentation is the Afrocentric orientation. Afrocentricity is a frame of reference where reality and activities are viewed and understood from the perspective of the African person. The Afrocentric approach seeks in every situation the appropriate relevance and meaningful presence of us as Africans, being at the center of everything that affects us, as opposed to being on the margins as an afterthought. And that was taken from Afrocentricity. And as such, our other frame of reference, as I mentioned already, is rites of passage. Kemi did, I think O'Shane did a very good presentation with the rites of passage, what it is, and I'm just going to reinforce that. Rites of passage programming is designed to teach our youth and adults, because it's an adult problem. The youth really are the results of the influences of the adults, whether it's community or in your own home, how to identify networks of support, enhance critical thinking from an Afrocentric perspective, create life plans. This is what we do in Rites of Passage, incorporate and put into practice principles relating to social welfare, social justice, responsibility, leadership, and responsible citizenship. And Yensumu Rites of Passage is normally a 5 to 6 month process. It could be longer, but that's the initial starting time frame. So the questions that we answer in Rites of Passage, as we also do in ACHA, and definitely when you want to know about self-determination, who are we? Are we really who we say we are? And are we all that we ought to be? There is another question: am I fulfilling my life purpose? Or what is my life purpose? So I'm going to deal with these 3, and these are quotes that came from also Frantz Fanon, who said we must ask ourselves these 3 basic questions to identify who we are as African people. So these questions are of history and culture, and more profoundly, they are questions of collective identity, based and born out of historical and cultural practices. And the essential quality of that practice must be the quality of self-determination. So to answer the question of who are we correctly, is to know and live one's history and to practice one's culture. And the second question is the question is, are we really who we say we are? Is to have and employ a cultural content criteria of authenticity. For example, criteria of what is real and what is unreal, what is appearance and what is essence, what is culturally rooted and foreign. The last question that we had was, are we all that we ought to be? Which is to self-consciously process and use ethical and cultural standards which measure men, women, and children in terms of the quality of their thought and practice in the context of who they are and must become in both an African and human sense. So in ACHA, we have done many lesson plans and many sessions with our members. And one of the things that we did when we actually did the process of self-determination, looking at the program we did last year, we did a Mentimeter, and some of these words that you're seeing on the slide came up when people wanted to describe self-determination in the African community and for themselves. The one that came up mostly was ancestors, the bolder and bigger words, what most people said. There are other words that came up, but ancestors seems to be the one that most people use in the program. And that's because we recognize the importance and the fact that we stand on the shoulders of those who went before us. And Sankofa means going back, learning the lessons from our ancestors and bringing those lessons forward in the future. So for many reasons, the word ancestors came up. Who are we as African Canadians? So these are some of the stats that were given to us. The fact that we are Africans who actually contribute to the society in Toronto, the kind of work that we do, the education that we pursue, we do all of those things. So we can't underestimate our contribution to the life in Canada. And if we understand who we are as African people, we believe in ACHA and Yensumu that we can actually improve our idea of self-determination, our Afrocentricity, and contribute even further once we understand ourselves. Kujichagulia, or self-determination, what we do in both rights and ACHA is look into how does this principle relate to us. We can look at it in the month of Black History Month of February, but as we all know, we are African 24/7, 365 days of the year. So looking at Black History Month or African History Month is a little sort of inkling into who we are as African people and how we can share resources. We don't see it as the be all and end all of who we are, because we know we're more than February, and we need to continue that process of understanding who we are. Some of the things that define who we are as Africans can be seen in some of the newspapers that we get. I won't go through this, but we actually went through the Caribbean Camera, which incidentally was the only newspaper. We looked at Share, we looked at Caribbean Camera, and Share did not have a lot of information about activities during Black History Month or African History Month, but also the Caribbean Camera had a lot of engagement on different levels of who we are as African people in Canada. And it's important that we know what is going on in our community. And this is one of the newspapers that we can use to simulate discussion, to see what's happening in the world, not just here, but in Africa as well, and the Caribbean and other places where we live. So those are one of the things that we try and encourage people to actually use. Right. So again, we always ask the question, how do the principles of Kwanda, in particular Kujichagulia for today, how do we represent ourselves, not just in African History Month, but also as African people? And one of the phrases that we use to sort of affirmations that we use was this Malana Karenga affirmation. Openness to exchange is a given, but it presupposes that one has kept enough of one's culture to engage in exchange, rather than slavishly follow another's lead. What Rites of Passage does, what the ACHA program endeavors to do, is have us at the center of the conversation. That way you will bring your Afrocentric, Caribbean, Black, you name it, whatever you want to call it, our understanding to the table and how things work with us, for us, and by us, as you bring that conversation to the table. So it's just a real good way of looking at things once you understand who you are in this society as a Black person. Another Mentimeter, we did a thing on ancient African civilization, starting from Kemet. And I like to read the affirmation by Malana, another one. African people introduced and developed some of the basic principles of human knowledge: astronomy, geometry, literature, math, medicine, ethics, advanced architecture, religion, etc. All of that stemmed from who we were in the beginning. And we start from Kemet. We do not, in both Rites of Passage and ACHA, we do not start from the fact that slavery was where our history started. And that's one of the big factors that I like, is that we go back from the beginning. We go back to ancient African civilizations. We go back to Kemet, and we realize that we were kings and queens. We had inventors, we had artistry that today is still, if we don't know that, we don't understand who we are. And we think we started from the days of slavery. That's not true. Okay, so again, the Mentimeter, people put ideas on that Mentimeter, and equally, I think all the words that came up about who we were in the past that affects us today came up on that Mentimeter. So this is the interactive piece. So I'm going to do 3 questions, and you can either say it or you can put the answer in the chat. If you can, I'm going to count down 5 seconds. I'll give you 5 seconds to give the answer. So yeah, just to make it interactive, so you're not just listening to a voice. So this is how you're going to play. Everybody get your fingers, start flexing your muscles because you're going to have to use them. Each slide has a zoomed in picture of a notable Black invention. Make a guess as to what you think the zoomed in intervention is, and you can shout the answer out, and I'm going to count down after 5 seconds and show you the correct answer. Again, we need to know our history. This is part of our history. We were inventors. We did everything, but you would never think it the way that our history is told to us. So this is a picture. I'm counting down. Tell me what you think it is. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you know the answer, somebody said a horn. Somebody said a horn. Nope. It's the light bulb. So fun fact, the light bulb, somebody said the light bulb after the answer came up. Very good. See, we're clever. We're creative, right? So this was an invention that was invented by Howard Latimer, improved the incandescent light bulb by creating a carbon filament, patented in 1881. I can't remember. I can't see, the writing's a bit small.
1881.
1881.
But just remember, these are a snippet of things that were invented by us, which we don't really always know about. What's this one? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And please type your answers in before we give you the answer next time. All right. Okay, somebody's good. Oh, everybody's good. Okay, next
You have to
one.
give us more time, man. Give us 7 seconds, not 5.
No. I only have 15 minutes, Kemi. It's gonna be fast. Keep it moving. So yes, most people got it right. Somebody said light novelette, not light. Even after the answer came up, novelette. Okay, so fun fact. Garrett Morgan, who invented the gas mask, patented a traffic signal in 1923. Garrett Morgan. Thank you, Kemi. After the fact. Okay, this one. This is a bit tricky. Oh my God. Lady. Lady.
The ball.
I'm not even counting down. She got it right. Next one. Lady, I'm impressed. The video surveillance camera to our bane. Nurse Marie Van, can somebody read that for me? It's very faint.
Nurse Marie Van Britten Brown, along with her husband, invented the first home security system with video surveillance in 1966.
Perfect. Okay, let's move swiftly along. Are we really who we say we are? Right? So that section was who are we? In rights, we say, who am I? Because you're working on yourself, but we also need to know who we are as African people. And the next question on the list was, are we really who we say we are? In rights, it would be, am I really who I say I am? So worldviews, from the we standpoint, worldviews are foundation frames and value references that inform a people's understanding and interpretation of reality. So if you have your worldview of Afrocentricity, you see the world in a very different way to the way we see it now, based on a Eurocentric worldview, which is what we're living in and we see and get sort of thrown at us every single day. One's worldview gives meaning to behavior and provides reinforcement for cultural and social engagement. Worldviews are often not explicit or regimented, but unfold in the everyday interpretation of reality. Worldviews reinforce ethos, power, social control, as well as the collective unconscious of a people. This is what rights teaches you as the individual, but we also in ACHA teach it as a community who we are. So this is, and we're really trying to explain what a worldview is, but keeping in mind when you do these programmings, you're talking about the Afrocentric, looking at it from an Afrocentric worldview. Next slide, I'm almost done. I know I have 2 minutes.
Okay, and in this, just so that you know, there's a question about the collective unconscious, which we'll answer at the end of all the presentation.
Okay, right. I'm just trying to get through this. This is my last slide. So are we all that we ought to be? That's the third question. Or am I all that I ought to be? The psychological and emotional assault of the Mafa, the disaster, that was slavery and colonization, has left the devastating imprint on our consciousness as Africans. This imprint has been thoroughly reinforced in many of us by the sustained machinery of white supremacy, systemic racism, and sustained poverty, which continue to thrive in our current society. The imprint then manifests itself through self-hating behaviors, a depressed self-image, a defeated spirit or deflated spirit, a lack of Afrocentric consciousness, and little cultural grounding, as we struggle with clearing away our minds and building progressive ways of being. Many of us find it a challenge to develop a consistent, liberated orientation. And those words were from the founder of Rites of Passage in Toronto, Nene Kwesi Kafeli, who was also a member of ACHA. And this quote is saying, we're not really who we think we are, because all of the things that was mentioned in that paragraph are what clouds our vision of who we are as African people. I didn't think I'd finish in time. Anyway, so what we like to say is keep discovering, finding out who you are, wherever you travel, wherever you go. We have been part of that area, that situation. So look for the Afrocentricity and Africanness of whatever you are doing, seeing, being, participating in. It is there. You just have to understand that it's there and know where to look. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lindis. I do see the conversations happening in the chat, so keep them going. I will now give the floor to Anania, who will be talking to us about her process and what it is that she does.
Greetings, everyone. I am going to share, and hopefully my sharing will be easy. Let's try. Let's see what's going to happen. Thank you so much. I think this is such a well-needed conversation, and my trust is that this is just the beginning. Or you may have been having them. I just wasn't part of it, but certainly this is a well-needed conversation. My process for Rites of Passage, I won't go over what Lindis shared, because Lindis really helped us to get the basics, the grounding of this. I will share what we do through the Anania Learning Journey, Inc. And this specific processes, all of our processes are grounded in African-centered knowledge systems. This particular process is the Sacred Leaders Training. We have been doing this, we're going into our 14th year. And I want to talk a little bit though about how this started for me. So I several years ago, almost 20 years now, I went through my own unlearning. And I've always been on the journey, of course, like many of us, but I went through a very intense 6 years that's all I did, grounding myself and clearing myself and exploring myself as a person and as an African descendant, and did my several initiations and so on. And out of that came a vision, and the vision was that I teach people what I know and do it from an African-centered perspective. And because much of my learning and my work, my background is in business, so it's a lot around leadership. So in engaging, combining my experiences and my knowledge of leadership with an African-centered way of doing things. I just wanted to give you that background. Came out the curriculum, which is a 10-month curriculum, comes from me. I used to meditate and be in silence once a week on a Tuesday. And one Tuesday, Spirit led me to my altar and said, write. And I started to write. And so this 10-month curriculum came out of that day, which became the Sacred Leader Training. It's a long story. That's the bite size of it. So I want to share with you today a little bit about this process that is really about inspiring individuals to realize their vision. A lot of focus on why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I on this planet at this time? What is Spirit's highest idea of my life at this time? So throughout the 10 months, that's really what the focus in. And based on that, then we are influencing changes in our families, in our communities, and throughout the world, but it has to start with us. So there's a lot of deep self-exploration. I want to, several years ago in 2016, a documentary was created on this work and this journey of sacred leaders training. And so I want to share just about 2 minutes of that documentary with you to give you a little insight into the pieces, of this work that supports major shift, serious reemergence, and a quest that is realized for why we're here on this planet at this time.
Like so many women, you know, there's always interference that we are dealing with, people interfering with our sexuality.
And it's scary and it's like fresh. It's like, you know, I'm starting over again. I'm in my late 30s and I'm trying to figure out where I'm gonna live and how long I can make this freelance thing work, and if I need to go back into an office and do the fashion thing and be stable, what am I supposed to do? And so my support system is really important to me.
Because we know the power of who we are, right? Mm-hmm. And what we're doing. If never before, you need to raise your consciousness. It is now. Yeah. If never before, you need to be at peace with yourself.
To be a sacred woman is to be true to yourself and accepting yourself as you are.
My only mission is to support women in remembering their power. That's my only mission, is to support women to remember how powerful we are.
Women can be exceptionally accomplished if only they believe. Because all things are possible. You only believe. And all women have to do is believe.
If you have a vision and you're able to articulate it and feel it, even if you don't know how to do it, the universe will compel you into right action. And you'll find things just coming into place. Looks like accidents, but there are no accidents in the universe.
I can't stop. It's coming out of every pore of me right now. And that it's okay to be scared. It's okay. Scary things happen in life. But I'm going to work through it, and I'm going to be just fine. Mm-hmm. But I'm scared. Good. Life is scary. Yeah.
This work that I do is about taking women through a process of deep self-exploration, of inner knowing, of aligning their minds, body, and spirit, so that they can lead from their greatest self. Every day, I'm journeying to remembering my power.
So I just wanted to share with you that for me is the essence of the Sacred Leaders Training. It's about taking, and it's a women only at this time. It's a women only process that was the directive of our ancestors for this work that I do. So this is a journey for women. And the youngest woman we've had in our process started at 21. So we've had women from 21 to 65 who, because we are in this colonized space, many of us don't know that as Africans, we go through rites and we go through processes of rites. And so it might be at 60 that a woman realizes that and she comes through our journey. And so a lot of our focus is on, all of our focus is on the self. It's on the understanding and the empowering and the acceptance of ourself. So that's what our rites process is about. Wanna just share with you the highlight. So we focus on, for our process, our focus is on our vision again. answering those questions Linda's talked about, with a focus on what is my purpose on this planet at this time. I believe, and I know this to be true, that if we return to self, and if each of us were living our full vision, why we came, because we know if we were living indigenously, our elders would have told the mother before we even come in why we're here. You know, in Akan, that's why we have day names and so on. Why are we here? And then for us to live that life completely while we're on this planet. So I believe that if we were all doing that, we'll have a peaceful planet. So I just wanted to list, and I won't go through all of this. This is just for your sight, some of the things that we focus on. So if it's focused, grounded in African-centered principles, tools, and technology. We have a beautiful scientific wisdom system as Africans. If we use it, life would be much easier. Yeah. So a lot of the work is around teaching our women and empowering for myself some of those tools and technology. Again, I talked about self-exploration and awakening. We move through what we would call a vision map. And that vision map then guides the women over this 10-month period. We have an e-learning platform that we use lots and lots of rituals because we're African people, and rituals guarantee success, right? So we have to do the rituals, and that's why the colonizers, that was one of the first things they ripped from us, our name and then our rituals. Because if we're not using the rituals, then that really keeps us in a place of stuckness and confusion and overwhelm and mental health issues and all of that. The rituals are critical to our success. So we do a lot of rituals. That's my life. Rituals is my life. So understanding also that rituals and community and is where healing comes from. As people, we're constantly healing, right? But the rituals with community is what strengthens the healing for us. We have during our process, women meet with me for a life vision coaching every 2 weeks, and then with a peace counselor once a month, and with each other often. And we have group sessions and so on. And we go away for our retreat where we get to be with each other and really get to learn. You know, as African people, we are people of community. And so we get together a lot, getting together, talking sitting under the tree and eating and drinking and having this conversation. That's what we do. So we take folks away to do that. And then after the 10 months, at the 10th month, we go away for an international culmination. Those again was what the ancestors had dropped into my consciousness, that this is what this process needs to be. And so we go to a place where traditional African practices are still being done to whatever level, and we go there and be with the people and culminate there. And of course, you know, I want to share with you, because I need to show off a little bit, a show and tell. A traditional African ceremony, as I talked about, is what we do. And once we are completed, we have created quite a community of practice. So just wanted to share some of our photos with you. This was the beginning. This was our very, very first group, and we culminated in Ghana. And just beautiful. Many of these women are still a part of the community, if not all. I think all of them are still a part of the community, and come back and share in different ways. I just want to make mention of the priestess that you see here in the middle. I'm kind of pointing to her. I'm not sure if you can see her. She is the second from the right, and she was the priestess who, she's my priestess who initiated me in Akan. And she transitioned in December. And so I just want to hold space and bring her name forward, Priestess Afua. She transitioned at 115. I was looking forward to seeing her. We didn't get a chance to see each other before she transitioned, but since 2010 when we went there, she is of course my spiritual mother. So we continue to be that. And so just more photos, you know, as we don't give up any of us when we are leaders and spiritual leaders and sacred leaders. We bring all of ourselves and the joy. We're only on this planet for joy, right? So this is just some of our photos. These are as you can see, I was probably about 110 pounds at that time. I'm not 110 pounds today. And so just lots and lots of photo. We have a lot of joys throughout the years. Again, this is some more experiences, and you can see us there drinking Red Stripe beer in Jamaica on one of our culmination experiences, because we are all of who we are. And this was in a compound. Some of those photos are in a compound. I want to also bring to this circle Kumba Blenheim, who transitioned. It was one of our sacred leaders who transitioned 2 years after her culmination. But I want to say that through the culmination, she certainly lived and learned how to live and explore. So she is right over here to the left with one of our sacred leaders, Verlia Stevens, at their culmination. There's a lot of water. You can, our photos show a lot of waters, but I wanted to show you that. For me, it's about, and what Spirit has asked for me to bring this work in this Western experience, in our urban experience, so that we can stay with what Spirit has called us to be. This is probably one of my favorite photos. I can't even remember which country this was, but it was one of my favorite photos. And this was really what it's about. It's about African women of African descent, remembering their power and becoming and standing in their matriarch as they are, so we can lead this world, and that we can jump because the ancestors got us. We have hundreds and thousands of ancestors who are constantly around us, and we can certainly jump. I want to leave time so that you can ask questions. Again, our focus is on women. Our focus is on women who lead, so that they can lead from a decolonized place, that they can lead from an African-centered place, so they can lead from the fullness of who they are as African women in these urban settings. We're closing out our seventh cycle of women. We are heading to the beautiful Antigua Barbuda. Can't wait. I think we're like 10 days away. So suitcases are packed, and we are about to go to Antigua Barbuda and be with the folks and do our culmination. And then we open up again for our next cycle. We start to accept applications on March 27th through to, I think, April 28th. I want to say this. This is a spiritual process. Our rites of passage is for elders, it's for leaders to support. It's a rite of passage, and it is ancestral driven. So every woman who has ever come through over these last 13 years have been chosen by the ancestors. So we do an application, men send their application in. We do interviews if we think the application is ready. We do a conversation. I don't want to call it an interview, we do a conversation. If we decide that the women are ready for this deep self-exploration, we go to the ancestors. I go to the ancestors and I divine, and the ancestors will say yes or no. And if the ancestors say no, then we go on this journey together. And we go on this journey for 10 months so that we can make this world a better place. And I'm going to stop there and just want to be open to our other conversations. Thank you so much for inviting me in.
Thank you, Anania, for that presentation. I also would like to mention something that we forgot for Lindis. The ACHA program is for children, and then the Yensumu program the rites of passage process is for adults. I will now give the spotlight to Lucky, who will be talking about the Delta Family Resource Center Youth Justice Program, where it is for youth who have been a part or have been impacted by the justice system, and what their program and process is.
All right, hi everyone. As I know most of the faces that I hear are familiar with me, and those who are not familiar, nice to meet everybody. So I'm Lucky. I'm from the Youth Justice Department. I'm under the Mayadane Justice, which we work with youth who are going through the justice system. But our aim is we always focusing on making sure that we are grounded in Afrocentric principles. And then our process is the Sesa Usaban. We have a resource tool that is available on the website. And I think it's key that as these young people, we encourage them not to look at the charges, because most of the time we kind of like talk to them about understanding that we are in a process of learning and we are in a process of becoming. And then in that way, that's why we have the Sankofa. And this is the Nguzo Usaban. And then each of our topic, we start with a proverb. And why we start with a proverb? Because we understand that our ancestors, we found wisdom when we understand why we have to speak in a way that is a proverb, and then we explain it to them. When we explain the meaning of the proverb, even themselves, they kind of like explain it to the way that they understand it. And in that way, if we feel like we are evolving as people of African descent, and we are encouraged to evolve as our ancestors do so, because each and every time that we are living in, we have to appreciate it and we have to take it, and then we have to grow from it. So that's why even the young people, as they go through the justice system, we kind of like encourage them to appreciate the process, but we don't say, appreciate the pain, but appreciate the process, because it makes you, and then it's who you are becoming. So we use, I think Linda already explained self-determination. So it's almost similar, but it's that we are now using it in a sense of bringing healing to the young people who are going through the justice system. And then this is the learning experiential cycle. This is key to how we deliver our program, because we prioritize lived experience. We kind of like encourage the experience, and then, we kind of like tell them to generalize, and then we kind of like want them to apply it into themselves. As young people, we encourage them to access their own wisdom. We raise the inner you. As a young person, you have the spirit of Ubuntu, which is a spirit of humanity. Within yourself, there's a potential. If one person knows who they are, and then they kind of raise the person who is within them, the potential of teaching others is key. And then this model consists with active values that encourage people to trust their lived experience. In that, self-respect is key. That these young people, we have to kind of like, because in them, we are learning too. That's why we come to a space. And then one of the things that we kind of like talk to them about, it's this is your space, and we respect it, and we respect the space because it's their space. And then when they come there, we explain to them, we are not working for the justice system, because trust is key to us as people of African descent. And then this model increases the awareness of the impact of Black racism, empathy, increased self-respect, transparency, authenticity, and then accountability. Our topics include understanding the justice system, identity and self, confronting anti-Black racism, self-advocacy and system navigation, well-being and mental health, family dynamics, healthy relationship, conflict, communication, and managing challenges. One of the topic that we kind of like work with them, that this one we do it in person with the young person, which is nature-based learning, because that's when it's like a young person get to understand, get to raise the senses that are within him through connecting with the nature, because nature is who we are. And then we have to connect to who we are becoming. And then when we talk about communication, we talk about communication. Why? Because in this, we look at the responses. If you're saying you're a passive communicator, these are the responses. When you are faced with conflict, and then these are you are an aggressive communicator, a passive aggressive, or you are an assertive communicator. And young people, most of the time they identify with assertive communicator. And then when you're saying you're an assertive communicator, we kind of like encourage them, because when you're saying you are an assertive communicator, you mean you are matured. You are able to have fair compromise. You are able to have a clear message. And it's like we kind of like reinforce the positive reinforcement when they identify with communication. Some young people, they will say, I'm an aggressive communicator. And then that's when we kind of like sit down, and then we kind of like bring a conversation like, okay, where do you want to get? Where are we going? Where do you want us to go as we are growing together? Because we are learning from them, and it's done in a conversation way. It's not like a one way, because as we know that we are using the lived-in experience. And then anti-Black racism. This is where we talk about reclaiming our history. Most of the young people that when we have this picture in front of them, they have no idea. And this is our history. And this shows how much we are excluded as the Black community. History and how we shape Canada, how it's shaped, and then the contribution that Black people has done. And we explain to them in a deep content on what is it that Black people has done in Canada, and then what is it that they've done to shape the country. And one of the things that young people talk about, and then we explain to them, they talk about the fact that they understand music, they understand being athletic. We say there's more. One of the key things that they talk about is like they knew about all this, they know that this can be key in shaping who they are becoming. And then we talk about what kind of climate anti-Black racism produce, and then we allow ourselves to reflect. What does over-policing means to you? What does it mean to be a young man who is Black coming out of school and then seeing a police car? And then if you are not grounded in who you are becoming, because it's all about fear, that our young people experience as they go through the system. And then because they are already in the system, you find that they don't know how to react in certain situations. And then that we come in to encourage them to ground themselves in who they are becoming, to know that the situation that they are in doesn't mean that they don't have to live in the society that we are living in. The society we are living in, it's a society that we are in, and then there's no way that we can find ourselves taking ourselves out. And this is key to us when we deliver this one. It's identity and self, which is in Nguzo Saba. This proverb that is here, I don't know if somebody can see it. The proverb says he is like a drum which makes a lot of noise but is hollow inside. And I think when we talk to young people, we kind of like encourage them to understand that to neglect one's ancestors is like it brings so much ill fortune in your life. So it's key that they kind of like ground themselves in who they are as they go through the justice system. They understand that they have ancestors who will be with them in the process. And then we kind of like even ourselves, as we come with them as bigger brother to support them, and understanding that Black people, we have tradition, and then we find we take pride in our inheritance. And then it's key that we understand that our young people understand our traditions, and then we explain to them. I have traditions that I have young people that I've spoken to them, they enjoy, and then I kind of like teach them my language. And it's like when you do those things, you're connecting to young people in a sense that it's like, they really never even thought of like, okay, you know what, can you go back, ask your parents about your culture, your background. And then because we brainstorm what is culture means to them. And then what is it that when they hear the word culture, it comes with values. As a young Black man, you have values. The values that you need to know that it's not something that you've learned, it's something that you've observed over time, or it's something that is coming within you as you see in the community. And then that's when we explain the rites of passage and explain to them what does it mean to them, their birth, as they become the men who they become. These are systems, when we explain to them that these are systems that are created as a way of oppression. As we talk about them, as we talk to them about that, we explain to them that the systems are here as a form of oppression, as a form of taking away your identity, of who you are becoming. And then it's key that you understand, what does it mean? What does your name mean to you? When you call yourself each and every day, what comes in when you hear your name in the midst of everyone? What is it that you hear somebody is saying to you? We talk about respecting elders, people of African descent. We take pride in respecting those who came before us. We take pride in understanding that we have ancestors, and then we take pride that there's a time in life where we will be transitioned. So that's why all those things are explained to young people as we go through. This is the Cesar Wusabat model, which we talk about, like the fact that we explore knowledge of self, which strengthen the Black identity. In doing so, it increased confidence in these young people's life, and we tell them that do not reduce yourself to a paper, because most of these young people, they are worried about their charges. When we explain to them that a charge, something that is written in court, is not you. Let's talk about you, as a young person that is here in the space. This is your space, and this, your charges are there, but who are you becoming? And we have seen results, we have seen outcome. Even the courts come back and talk about what is it that is happening. How do we talk to these young people? I have an example of 14-year-old who wanted to fight everybody around him, but after doing the program, he looked at himself as an advocate. He's able to advocate for other people because the inner self in him, when you explain to him that that's a way of you trying to advocate for the people that you love. So advocating for the people that you love means there's something, the self that you need to discover, And discovering that self means there are other ways that you can advocate for these people, because the system that we are living in is a system that cannot give you a second chance, is a system that doesn't identify as you, is a system that doesn't even look at you as somebody, because we have, I have experience in working with other youth who doesn't identify as Black, and then I've seen the difference of how this system gives chances to other youth, yet it doesn't give, chances to people of color. And I have firsthand experience in that. So that's why we kind of like explain to them, and it's key that they understand their identity in what we are going through. It's being taken out, and then they don't have to reduce themselves to a paper. They have to know. That's why we always tell them, we always tell ourselves, like, okay, we have studied this system and understand how they operate. However, we have failed to access inner self, in the sense of transitioning our wisdom to the next generation. And I think that's key, that we understand that knowledge without wisdom is water in the sand. And this is, I will close it here. And then thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Lucky, for that wonderful presentation. So then we will now jump into our panel discussion.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, O'Shane. And I'm going to have to talk really fast because we're like probably 10 or 15 minutes behind, and there's so much information to share. But I'd just like to thank the panelists for all of the presentations. A lot of really wonderful information. I know Sarah is collecting and while O'Shane and I are doing a lot of the talking, there's a whole team behind supporting us. So just acknowledging Sarah, Habib, Danny, I think that's the entire team who's with us today, just supporting and doing the background work. So thank you. Sarah is saving the questions, and so we're going to have 5 or 10 minutes at the end, depending on how good they are. So we can have some of the questions and answer some of the questions that you have. So our panelists, O'Shane introduced them at the end. I'm not going to spend more time, but basically it's African Heritage Month. And I think Linda spoke to this, and I know that Rep. Anania also speaks to this in terms of Delta family didn't do anything special for African Heritage Month. Basically, we do this every day, every month, all through the year. So basically, we always have a capacity building session at the end of the month, the last Friday of every month. And so this time we thought, okay, our last 2 sessions were on anti-Black racism. We thought this time, let's focus on the rites of passage as a special homage to African Heritage Month. We also have workshops for families and children around confronting racism in the education systems. So those happened. So we're not doing anything special, but we always do something special. So I just wanted to name that for us. So we've heard a lot about rites of passage processes. We've looked at 3 different iterations of rites of passage processes and programs which build identity. We're now going to shift a bit and ask, are rites of passage relevant in Toronto of today? Is it something we did, our ancestors did way back, and it has no relevance now? What's happening on the continent? Are they still practicing rites in different parts of the continent? So I'm going to ask Babatunde, who is a member of our team, just speak very briefly about what some of what's happening in Nigeria, for example, because you're from Nigeria, in rites.
Thank you, Kemi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Babatunde. A pleasure meeting everybody here, and a great pleasure to talk about this topic, very important. I'm from Nigeria, as Kemi mentioned, population of about over 280 million people. That's the most populous country in Africa, the 6th largest populous country in the world. So it comes with a forefront in terms of different cultures. But the 3 major cultures back at home is the Hausa, the Igbo, and the Yoruba. I'm from the Yoruba tribe. And I always tell people whenever I meet people, when they ask, what's your name? My name is Babatunde. Tunde can be a short abbreviation of my name, but my name is always pronounced in full. So with answering or with defining what my name means, I'm going to go into the question. Babatunde means reincarnation. That's what I tell people. That strikes them. So what do you say by reincarnation? My father's dad died the same day I was born. So it's assumed that I am my father's dad come back. So in answering your question, Kemi, and also making people aware, back at home, particularly with the Yoruba, and I'm sure this is also synonymous with the African culture. When we talk about rites of passage and when we talk about birth, for an example, it's always a story of whom we are. We revolve around stories. We are from the spirit. We are initially spirits before we take on a human form. We have history behind us, a lot of history. So when it comes from stories, no particular child is named without a story. There must be a background behind your child's name. I've just mentioned mine, for example. So for rites of passage, there is for birth, there's for marriage, and there is for eldership and also ancestorhood, like you mentioned earlier. But I'm going to speak specifically on the birth. When it comes to birth, for example, for the Yoruba clan, there are some certain things that happens. After 7 days is when we name the child. So when we name the child, there's some certain things that are usually available to name the child. We have honey, we have salt, we have bitter cola, we have what we call adun, and we have gin, schnapps. All these are, as a process of being named, have its significance on the child. So honey means sweetness. So it is said that the child's life will be sweet. Salt is a delicacy. And when you do not add salt in a delicacy, it does not have taste. It signifies that the child's life will have taste. Bitter cola, meaning that the child will grow old and last on the earth. Assumedly, that is why I always say black is black and black is strong. That's why we live longer, quote and unquote. That's what I always think. Adun, meaning sweetness, also is the life of the child will be sweet. The schnapps, gin, alcohol, there is what we say in our language, eniti koni, meaning the alcoholists will not be put to shame. That's the significance of tasting alcohol. So there's a root, there's a history. What we have right now is we as parents and our youth being disoriented in our heritage. Lucky spoke about anger some few minutes ago. Why would the African child be angry? We've gone through a tumultuous change in terms of history, in terms of racism, in terms of things. And there's a gene, there's a DNA, which we cannot deny. That is what that's what we as Africans carry, which makes us different, which makes us whom we are. If we have a car, if we have a Mercedes, you can't take that Mercedes to a place, to a Benz place to repair. It must go to a Mercedes. So the rites of passage, significantly meaning we must know who we are. We must understand who we are. We must understand our roots. There's a total dysfunction. That's why we are facing what we are facing right now. I don't know if I've answered. I have too much here to say, but I'm just going to leave it at this right now. So thank you, Kemi.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, actually, and what's I've just been messaging some of the panelists because it mirrors so much the processes that we do in our rights process here. So it's just really thrilling to see that we have been so authentic. So thank you so much for that. Lucky, do you want to speak very little about what the status of rights in South Africa?
Yeah, I will talk about I will talk about it in the sense of I think it's almost similar as Babatunde, the name, because my name comes, and my last name, it comes with all the history. It comes with all the history. I know where my ancestors stepped just because of the way that my last name comes with totem. And then when I transition, the final thing that they do, it's when it's a poem, it's a celebration. And then that's when the poem for my last name will be played and everybody will be talking about the way, because I'm now transitioning to another place where all those who walked before me, and all the places that I walked in right now, I came even to Canada. That applies to me as an individual. So when I transition, the poem that will be done, it will include all the steps that I have gone through for the fact that my kids are being left behind. They are left with that part of me. Now they have to have that in them. And then my last name is a makakula, you know, and I can go Tombe and Kucho Konto Agos Bian Sabian Matom and Carbonina. It's a long when I transition the way we connect to our ancestors. And then when I talk about adulthood, it can take the whole day. When a man becomes an adult, that's when you have to show love for your community. And it is a process whereby you go to the mountains and you spend time with the elders, showing respect to them. And that's when, because we don't do circumcision at birth, that's when we do circumcision. And when we do circumcision, we do it the natural way, you know, the pain that a man has to take, you know, and then you have elders who will kind of like be guiding you on how to ground yourself as you experiencing the pain. And they have all the stories that they will tell you, why are you feeling this way? And then when all that is done, you come back from the mountain, you come back with full of respect for elders, respect for the community that you are living in, respect for everybody, the spirit of you as a man. You feel like, you know, I've made it, you know, I've transitioned from being a child now I'm transitioning to becoming who I am becoming as a man. And then that's when my elders will be sitting down with me and telling me all the stories and the stories that I have to transition as well. I'll be hearing stories that I have to transition to my kids. You know, right now I have my kids in Toronto. I tell them story that I believe, that I hope that they will be taking to the next generation. That will be, you know, because they know Daddy came here, but this is how we came along. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Wow. And I find it really interesting that you're from you're from Joburg, which is the biggest, you know, the biggest center. And even though you were born and grew up in Joburg, you still went through a rites of passage process. So that's amazing. And I'm going to actually now turn to O'Shane, who is a younger one, and ask her, why do you think it's needed or relevant today? Because obviously the fact that you're here means that you've invested in the process. So why, as a young person who understands what young people are going through, do you think it's necessary or relevant today?
I think that it's very relevant today because a lot of us mentioned the generational piece. And there's a lot of us young people who are not aware of what these processes, and I'm lucky enough to be aware of it through the Wood Green Rites of Passage. And I got a taste of Anania's process with Sacred Women's International. And now that I have my daughter, she now gets a taste through me. And I feel like a lot of our young people are now having kids, and a lot of us are lost. But through both those processes that I was able to experience, my daughter's name is derived from the Shona language in Zimbabwe, but that's from my knowledge of going through my own rites of passage. So I'm preparing, as much as I may not know exactly what is happening, have an in-depth understanding or have gone through it on the continent. I went through it. So now my daughter has a taste of that. So as she grows older, we're able to answer questions for her. So I feel like it's a generational piece. And as many of us young people go through the rites of passage process, we're now able to slowly heal our generation, so the next generation can begin their healing process as well. A great example of that is I grew up with my mom beating me. I don't do that with my daughter anymore because now I know what that comes from. And going through the process, you're healing yourself, and you're basically, as you heal the next generation. And I think that's very important, very, very relevant for every young person in Toronto to be able to experience that. So I in synopsis, I do think that the rites of passage process is still very relevant here in Toronto.
Thank you, Shane. And I'm opening it up now to the rest of the panel. Anyone wants to speak to how it's relevant to young people in Toronto or to people in Toronto? And I want to just, because I did my rights process when I was a hardback woman, and I still continue. So it's not something that's only for children or people who are coming into adulthood, adolescence. You can do your rights process at any stage of your life. And you should do it from time to time just to actually remember self and move on that. And I see Meheret saying we're speaking about intergenerational trauma and healing with our youth yesterday. So yeah, it's something that we really need to really keep very present. So any of the panelists would like to speak about why rights is relevant or today?
I'll go briefly. One of the speakers mentioned earlier that whom we are revolves around ritual and community. We need to underscore that very well. Where we come from, our background is basically community oriented. We find out that the basic stages of what our discourse right now, if we are going to talk about marriage, let me talk about marriage, where I come from. You just don't approach a lady and you say, I want to date you and stuff like that. You involve the family. You need to know the family where she comes from. She needs to know the family where he comes from. You need to know what their generations are about. What do they speak to? What are the purposes? What have they done wrong? What have they done right? These are the things that would, yes, form the structures for which, and you can't just go and speak to a girl. Someone from the family would go on behalf of you to say, this is what we want to do. As strange as that seems nowadays, it has built a great network of, community. So right now we're in a defunct. We are at the Delta right now, are bringing the community to people. That's what we do. We try to link them with what people should have in terms of services, in terms of community living, in terms of counseling. These are the things where if it had transcended the right way it should have, we would not have so much of the issues we have. It's about knowing who we are. If we don't know who we are, we can't function as the way we should. So when we have a thorough knowledge of whom we are, like it's always said, the brain works at a certain percentage of capacity. If you don't use if I don't use it very well, I won't optimize. Right now, we're facing a decadence of people knowing who they are. And until we know whom we are, and we are properly trust into whom we are, and we are proud of whom we are, then we need to show the world that this is whom we are, and we're stepping into the right place. So it is very integral, it's very important, and we need to go back. We need to start doing things on our own as individuals. We need to portray, and we need to be proud of whom we are. Yes, we have a history, we have pain, but look, pain is also an instrument for positivity if used very well. There is no life passage without pain. We've gone through pain in the past, but yes, we also have a very rich culture of history. And yes, it is something that's very, very relevant in Toronto. Thank you.
I'll allow one more panelist to comment if they would like.
So if I could, I just want to build on what our brother Babatande said. Listen, we are in a time and we are in an environment of chaos and confusion and hurt and fragility, and the list goes on. Our young people especially, but not only our young people. I work with people of all ages, burdened, painful, lost emotionally and spiritually. So when you ask that question, is it relevant today? I'm going to say it's more relevant now than it has ever been in our lifetime, because this absence of self, and I am going to say what I always say without apology, wearing kente cloth does not make you understand yourself.
Yeah.
Wearing African clothing and knowing a few African words is not what we're talking about. When you go through rites, I was 39 years old when I went through my own process, and it was Yoruba. And because I wasn't born Yoruban, it meant that I had to go through 6 years. I did 4 very intentional years learning the practice, learning myself. And the first thing I had to do was the healing of not just my lifetime, but lifetime before me, right? That's the depth of work. People spend that 4 years or that 6 years in universities learning colonial ways,
Mm-hmm.
It's a choice we have to make. Do we invest in ourselves, declothe the colonial practices, and then reclothe ourselves? That's a choice. But I'll tell you this, buying kente cloth and having Kwanzaa, as much as I think it's critical, it's not what we're talking about. We're talking about intimacy with self. We're talking about learning and understanding what our brothers and all of us have said. We're talking about self-exploration. Who am I? What does this name Ainania means? That was my first name. My second initiation is Ayodele. Joy has come home. I have a responsibility to live that life every day because of my name. And that's what, so Oshun, who has her daughter, and her name, it's telling her daughter constantly, that's your nature. That's your nature, baby. And so you have a responsibility to live it. And I could talk forever, as you know, but I really want to underscore that more than ever before. That's where the government needs to be putting its money. All of the, if we want to keep our children out of prison, if we want to keep them out of the gangs, they're going to the gangs because as a people, we come together. A gang is like community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if that's what we want, this is where the investment needs to be. And let's stop minimizing it and thinking this is something we do on the side and you don't need to pay for it. And we just, no, this is critical to our survival. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you. Powerful words coming from all of the speakers. And I want to wind down very shortly so that we can have time for questions, because there were a lot of questions. But one question that often comes up, and while our focus is on Black communities, we live in diverse communities. So are rights limited to Black people? I throw that out. I don't know who would like to speak to that. Maybe I'll ask Anania to speak to it, because I know that you have worked with other communities. Sorry, and Lindis after.
So I'll answer quickly. Listen, as I said, we're in a time of madness. So I open up and when the ancestors gave me first, this was about Black folks. But I've been directed that I can open it up. So we have had Indigenous people, and we have had people of South Asian descent and people of color. Because when we look at Indigenous practices, they're very similar, yeah? They're very similar. So we're trying to, for me, it's the idea, but, so if you're Indigenous and you come into my practice, if you're white, you happen to be white, we've not had that yet. The answers have not said yes to that yet. But if you're of color and you come into it's an African practice. It's African centered, grounded in Yoruba and Akan and some other Eastern African traditions. That's it, right? So if folks, because we can teach people our ways to help them to heal. So that's how I look at it.
Thank you.
Let me correct myself. That's how the ancestors have directed me at this point.
Okay.
Because if it was up to me, probably not.
Thank you, Anania. I think Lindis was going to say something.
I was going to say, well, first of all, let me say, this definitely feels like we're sitting under the baobab tree having a community conversation. And I think everybody on this call needs to appreciate the fact that these conversations don't happen in the normal circles that we deal in. Very important conversations that need to happen, whether you're talking about rights, whether you're talking about Afrocentricity, whether you're talking about who am I, because I agree with all the speakers. I love what Babatunde said. I absolutely love Lucky's program. And Anea, I have yet to be part of your program, but as we talked about on our travels, it's on my radar. But let me tell you, one of the things that I would say to that question, Kemi, is other cultures have their own rites of passage. This is not just ours. We do our own rites of passage, which, interestingly enough, we have two people from the continent here, Babatunde and Lucky, and what you're talking about is exactly what we do in rites of passage, not to the extent of, life-altering measures being, near-death experiences, and we can't do that in Canada, but we try and get as close to that as possible. that experience of self-discovery, which happens as a result of that veil being lifted and the understanding that we are in a Eurocentric worldview that we didn't even understand we were in. So the important thing for even before I did rights, even before I was in ACHA, one of the things that I knew for sure is that if you don't know who you are, you have no idea where you're going, right? So even more importantly, if you do not know who you are as an African-centered person, you really are just a tree blowing in the wind. So what we find is the principles of Kwanzaa, the principles, not the word Kwanzaa, but the principles of Kwanzaa, those are embodied in everything that we do every single day of our lives. If we think about it, we do all those things. And if you live your life with those principles in mind, things fall together. And rites of passage can even strengthen all of those principles. So it's a shame because people don't understand. We can have these conversations and people will go away and go, oh, that was a great presentation. That was just wonderful. Oh my God, those people knew their stuff. But what's the next step to that? What's the next step to that? And what we find is it's work. It's work. It's not you pay your money, you get your rites of passage badge. It's a work in progress. It keeps going. You build on what you know. Somebody said in the chat, you come in at different levels. You have preschool, then you have up to the PhD plus. We're working past the PhD. We're working from birth, before birth, preschool, you name it. We are going towards the ancestral realm and understanding the importance of that in the cycle of life. And I know you got me all excited with your enthusiasm. So look, the cycle of life that we are all part of, and we are intertwined. And everybody's mentioned community. If you do not know who you are and you do not know that you are part of the community, again, lost. Ubuntu comes to mind. I am because you are, therefore I am. People don't always put the end of that meaning. I am because you are, therefore I am. One doesn't happen without the other. The other word, my other favorite word for 2023 is, lucky you're from South Africa, Sawubona.
Sawubona.
Love it. And you know what? Everything you guys have said about your ancestors and getting married and knowing who that person's family is, Sawubona. I see you. Not just I see your image on the screen. I see you and who went before you and who you are and where you're. I see everything about you. Because I see you as an African person. That means you understand the experiences that people have gone through because we all share that same collective consciousness. I know somebody asked a question about that. Anyway, I'm going to stop. I'm getting excited.
Okay.
But I need to stop and let the questions begin. Thank you.
I'm going to let one more person speak, but before that, I just want to interject a bit by saying that opening a process to other people, quite often as a culture, look at what happened, and it's not only Black people, look at what happened in all of Africa, South Africa, look at what happened in the Caribbean, look at what happened in Canada. The indigenous people opened up and then got shut down. So basically, I think we need to be very strong and very grounded in our own traditions. And if we do choose or are guided to allow others in, we don't shift or adjust it to suit them. It is our process. We live in a culture which is very Eurocentric. They're not shifting and adjusting without having to do it. So basically, when so much has been taken away from us, when we do manage to find a space where we have our own ways and traditions, we need to stay true to that and not be too busy with adjusting it and shaping it to accommodate other people. One more comment on that question as to whether it is only for Black people. I don't know who would like to, if anybody would.
I can jump in. Oh, go ahead, Lucky.
Okay, a quick one.
So I was going to say, yes, I think it's key that we understand that, we have a spirit of humanity, and the spirit of humanity has no boundaries. And in that, we have to raise it within other people so that they can recognize who we are. We don't have to compromise who we are. If they want to come to our space, they have to compromise the fact that we are who we are and respect who we are. I'll make an example, when it comes to religion, Black people in South Africa, our ancestors, they used to pray, they used to fast, but there was no Bible. And these are the things that then the Bible, when the colonialism started, the Bible came. And then all that stopped. The way we understand the God that we serve as us versus the way that we understand with the God that is introduced to us. We have to question all those things, because I think nowadays, I speak to young people, I tell them that when you go to church, listen, because sometimes there might be the person talking to you is completely saying things that are against who you are, and you are not listening. You are not listening. You are making noise. You are saying hallelujah instead of like, let me listen to what is being said to me. Because as a Black person, I understand myself. I am in this space because I want to grow. You go to church because you want to discover and you want to grow, you want to connect, you want to be filled spiritually. But who are you doesn't have to be because you are in this space. Now you are changing who you are. And those things, they can happen just because you can't hear what is being said. It's just noise. And then you go home, you're like, okay, I feel good about myself. Today I went to church. But what was said, I'll make an example about pastors. I've sit under pastors who talks about the way they are connected to the Jewish community and how, and I always like, you question those things like, okay, you are sitting under a person who's clearly telling you that you are a Gentile. You are out of the space, but you are sitting here listening to them as a Black person. And this is the thing that I always say, question who you are, and as much as we want everybody to be in the same space, to raise the spirit of humanity within themselves, because we need to serve each other in the world we are living in. But we need to respect each other's understanding of who they are.
Thank you, Lucky. And it's now 15:15, and I want to save some time for questions. So I'm going to ask each panelist to give one message that you would like to leave the audience with, or participants. One message, short, that you would like to leave with the participants. I don't know who would like to go first. Let's go in. Maybe we should go in terms of eldership, and I don't know it, but I'm not sure who is the eldest, so everyone is quiet.
I know I'm the youngest, so
okay, go for broke. We'll go alternate eldership.
I'm not the eldest, but I can go first.
Okay, so why don't you go, Babatunde?
Okay, I'm trying to get the right words. There's so much to say. It's a plea to everybody here. This is much more than a workshop. This is an identity crisis. There's so much where we are coming from. There's so much history. There's so much culture. There is so much information that has been swept under the carpet. We have found ourselves in the Western world. We are in a transition. We like it or not, but we owe it to ourselves not to have that identity crisis, not only for us, but for our children and generations yet unborn. They're waiting for us. Mm-hmm. It's either we embrace Westernization wholly and we are disjoint. There is no way we embrace, this is me, this is what I'm saying. You don't have to agree with it, but look, when we get home, let's think about it. If we embrace too much of Westernization, we become dysfunctional because this is not who we are. I am Black, I am proud. My ancestors have gone through pain. One instrument through which my ancestors went through pain was music. Music has transcended. I can talk about one person, Fela Anikulapo Kuti. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows Fela. Mm-hmm. Fela went through a lot, but look at the products which he has right now. We have Burna Boy, we have Wizkid. We know what Afrobeat has done right now in the world. Let's see pain as a blessing. Let's use the pain that we have and use it as a blessing. There is nowhere we go to as a Black community, as a Black individual, where we will not stand out. Let us preach whom we are and do who we are and be proud of who we are. Thank you.
Can I go next, Kemi?
And in the interest of the time, I'm just going to, go next, please.
I can go very quickly. I'm going to ask the question, what has this conversation stirred up in your minds about the importance of rites of passage, and what contributions can you start from today about educating your children in particular? What can you do to start that process? Because we are all able to conduct rites of passage in our homes with our families, children's, adults, in simple ways, such as getting people, I'm not going to give through, we've done a lot of presentations, but what can you do, even before you join any of these organizations, what can you start by doing? Reading is one of the ways that you can get a ton of information and start to encourage that interest and that enthusiasm about our children and our families knowing more about who they are, and get a sense of, this is the next step I have to do. This is a small step towards the bigger step of committing to more commitments, such as the Rites of Passage program, or all of the different activities that we've talked about. And one of the things I will end by saying is, so Lucky's program sounds like an ACHA derivative, and we could actually work hand in hand before the kids get to the stage that you deal with. And that's one of the things I will say that I see. Any child who's gone through a program such as Rites of Passage or the ACHA program even, they don't end up where you are seeing your children at that level. So because they learn, they understand, they have a sense of self, they go to university, they see the kids acting crazy, they're grounded. I've seen it in my children, in other people's children who've gone through our programs and Rites of Passage. It's not the be all and end all, but it's the beginning of building our community. People still have their own personalities, their weaknesses, their failings, their strengths. It's not going to stop that, because all of that is what makes us who we are. But understanding yourself will give you a clearer path. Start now. Start today. Start at 2:30 when we finish this conversation.
Thank you, Lindis. And one thing I must say about my people, boy, we could talk. I say one short message. I've had like two lectures, but really important, and what's no important stuff. And also what's really wonderful is that people in the chat are also leaving their messages, which are just as important. So thank you. That's real synergy. Anania, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll try to be really brief, because I think what everybody has said is good. I want to underscore what Linda said, though. Even before I went through my rites, my children were at Asha. They were in drumming and dancing, because I understand the power of that. They were, so even before, so I think, I just want to underscore, start where you are. Start where you are. And the only other thing I want to say to you is, make it your responsibility to understand who you are, because it's not what they said you are, but it's your responsibility. You spend time on social media, you spend time doing all kinds of things. Say today, in this moment, I am going to commit to every day I will learn one more thing about who my people are. That's it.
Ashley, and as Nanette says, do the work. Do the work. Yeah, thank you. So since you're youngest, O'Shane, I'm going to let Lucky go next, so we end with our youngest. One message to everyone.
One message is that, I just want to say what Anania and Linda said, start where you are. And I think it's key that we do that, because, I'll make an example about my kids. I took them to Africa. When we went home, it was a different experience for them, the environment and everything. They came back here. Now they are able to explain how everything was stolen in Africa. We went to watch Wakanda Forever. And to be honest, my daughter spent time talking to people while the movie is going on about how all this Africa was going to be better. And I kind of like, I almost stopped her, but I was like, okay, you know what? This is my daughter being honest with who they are and what they know. And I don't want to interrupt that. And then she was educating other kids, same age. And they had so much interest in what she knows. And I say to myself, these things, it takes her going to Africa. Even in class, the teacher was saying something wrong about Africa. My daughter was able to stand up and say, Miss, I don't think that's correct. I know this is the situation in Africa. Not everyone is hungry. Because she was talking about hunger in Africa, and then my daughter was like, yes, they don't have what you have in Canada, but people are happy in Africa. And then she explained that. And then it's like, and the teacher was explaining to me that, you know what, I was shocked. Just because the way she was telling me, I was telling them about the impact that as children, they can have to other children around the world. And then she started explaining that they can have impact, but do not think that everyone in Africa is hungry. I know. And it took us going there to see. It took us going there to know that as a young person, you have responsibility. I came back to Canada, my kids, they know their responsibility. They know what is aligned to them and how they have to live. And I think that's key, that now they are able to speak. When they know that something is wrong, they raise their hand in front of the class and say, no, it's not like that, miss. And I was so proud of her. And I think that's where we kind of like have to take it from. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lucky. And I'm cracking up here saying I love my people because we know how to be concise. O'Shane, quickly, please.
Sure, I'll be quick. I just want to leave with, and for people to understand that these are not just programs. It's a process and it's a journey. And I started my Rites of Passage, like in high school. And I got a taste of Anania's process when I was in my early 20s. And as I grow older and I had my daughter, I remember the teachings of the original Rites of Passage that I went through and the process that I went through with Anania. And I remember a year ago, I heard her voice in my head. And I was in my gut, I knew it was time to take another step in terms of my journey. So I started therapy. And as I continue to grow and I'm about to get married, it's another journey and it's another process. So understand that it's not just you go through through a Rites of Passage and then you're done. It's knowing that it continues. Now I look at my daughter, she's 3 now. It's time to get her into Acha. Like it's a process, it's a journey to know who you are and to trust your gut as a Black person.
Thank you very much, O'Shane. So I'm going to very quickly thank you all for all that you've shared and thank the audience and the participants, because it's not an audience, it really is a conversation that we're having. And I think Sarah identified 2 questions that we want to try and answer. One was, Sarah, the first question was to Lindis, explain the collective unconscious with an example. This is when you were speaking about Afrocentricity in your presentation.
So I'm just going to preface this by saying I'm not a psychologist, but the term collective unconscious in psychology consists of the basic ideas and images that all people are believed to share because they have inherited them. Some of my research shows that a lot of people think the third world societies have a better understanding of what collective unconscious is. And I totally agree with that. I'm not agreeing with the third world. I'm agreeing with the fact that we as African people have a very strong understanding of the collective unconscious. And I think collective work and responsibility, one of the principles of Kwanzaa, actually speaks to that. We work together, we understand the norms, we intuitively know how we're supposed to react to things. Sometimes that intuition is taken away from us because we're now thinking very Eurocentrically. But when you do, like for me, some of the things that we did in Rites of Passage made some of that understanding more apparent to me of what our collective unconscious is. It's in you, but you have to then get in touch with your inner consciousness to understand this is not wrong, it's actually who we are, it feels right, and it feels like it's part of who our community is. So I think that probably answers that question, I believe.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And in the interest of time, the next question I think Sarah had was around speaking about love for your community. You spoke about in the rites of process, showing love for community. What did that look like?
Yeah, I like love for community. It's when you are showing respect for your elders, and then showing respect for the environment that you are living in. Because I myself, when I become an adult, when I take my step of becoming an adult, I know that there are certain birds that I cannot eat because they represent who I am. The environment there are certain trees that I cannot touch because they represent who I am. And it's a way of connecting you to the environment that you are in. Each and every last name is attached to the community that you are in. Something that is within the community that you cannot touch, and something that in the community that you cannot even eat. I'll make an example, like even here in Canada, when I see dogs, I can interpret what they are saying. And it's something that you can only understand when you go, because you take time in the mountains. First of all, you go there with elders, you have nothing to eat. You will eat in there. They will gather everything that you will eat, you will find it over there. It's not like you go there with like, okay, here's my food, I'm gonna spend 7 days away. You get there, you have to know how to start firewood without matches. You have to know certain skills of survival as a young man that these elders are teaching you. And in the process, you have to show that you are grounded in showing respect for the community, for the elders. And then in that way, that's when you will, after those days, that's when you will go through the circumcision. Because if they see you are not fit, it's possible that after the circumcision, you may not follow the procedures that you need to follow in order to heal properly. Because there's nothing that they use that is westernized to do the healing in the process. So it's like every step that they tell you, you have to follow. And then in the love for the community, when you go back to the community, there's a lot of things that you have to serve. You have to serve your sisters and your brothers in the community for some time, serving them, fetching firewood, cooking for them. There's a lot of that is based on you showing love for the people that are in the community. And it's like, and then when you finish the process, that's when you will have a celebration. But it is a process that some of the things, and for the respect of the culture, some of the things I cannot explain until you go through them. And then when you go through them, that's when you kind of like have to you have to experience it yourself, because it takes somebody who's older than me to explain it to me so that I can explain it to the ones that are younger than me when it's their turn.
Yeah.
Kemi, can I just jump in very, very quickly? I promise, like 10 seconds. What Lucky just said struck a note with me. That question is an amazing question, because when we talk about love, Lucky just said he shows love in his actions. We use that word in a very precarious way in the Western world, but we don't follow through with the actions. And when you talked about cooking, cleaning, fetching firewood, those things show, it's your actions that show love. Love, the word love is very misunderstood, and I think we have the complete wrong understanding of what it is. Showing it is more important than saying it, because saying it is just words, and we get very confused with that. Thanks.
And I'm sure that Anania, because she had said we need to talk about love, so just one quick word, if you want to, or we can just go straight to the...
It'll be very, very quick. Love starts with self, and love starts with healing self. That's why healing is so important. And when we go through rites, like Lucky's saying, it's really about testing our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self. And once we come out of that, then love is easy. It's not even something you have to learn.
Thank you, everyone. So we're now going to go back to just the wrap up.
So the outcomes that we addressed earlier We're just gonna go over them again to see if we addressed those. The outcomes today were to introduce the rites of passage process, which I think we were able to get done today. To highlight the various rites of passage processes in the GTA, to explore current rites of passage in Nigeria, to explore the relevance of rites in today's world and beyond, and to share how you can connect with rites and other African or Black focused programs in Toronto. I don't know about you, but I think all of those were addressed, and I left here knowing about other processes such as Lucky's, and being more informed of all the other processes as well. What do you guys think? Feel free to put your thoughts in the chat. We also have on the screen right now the contact information of Lindis, Anania, Lucky, myself, and Babatunde. If you ever want to reach out to us or have any questions or want to join a process or get to know more about a process to join in the future.
And I've also asked Sarah if she would send the links to each of the 5 presenters to you so that you would have access to them.
Yes, we'll do.
Thank you.
So we just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to join us today for this crucial conversation that we had today. So I look forward to seeing you all at our next session, which will be on March 31st. And we will send an email in regards to what the topic of that conversation will be. And thank you to our presenters and our panelists for taking the time to educate us and talk to us about the importance of rites of passage.
Can I just take 1 minute, O'Shane, and show the resource book, which is available for free? We did it with some partners. These are the topics. These are all of the modules. And it just is such an affirmation of who we are. Each of the modules, it's done, all of this has been done by community. Then goes a Saber in it. Then we have the experiential model. Then it speaks about the principles on which the work is done. So even if you don't have to go anywhere, understanding the justice system, and each chapter has a proverb: knowledge without wisdom is like water in the sand. Something about anti-Black racism awareness, and an Adinkra symbol. This one is EPA, which is handcuffs. And then there are workshops, there's information. This is the justice system. If you have somebody who you know is going through the justice system, this explains what happens and how it works. So I won't spend much more time, but you can just go to our website, www.dfrc.ca. Click on the media, and it's there. You can download it yourself. Back to you, O'Shane. Thank you everyone for coming. It's like 5 minutes over, but we started 5 minutes late, so we're good. Thank you all presenters. You all were all amazing. I knew you would be, but you blew me out of the water. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you. And I have added the survey, the brief survey, but it's important so we can understand how to make this series and sessions better for the next one. So please feel free to fill that out for us as well. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the sunshine that we blessed with today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Have a good day.